This is Top Landing Gear. Hello and welcome to Top Landing Gear Full Flaps and our full-length interview with Bizjet pilot Mark Blois-Brooke. Now, Roy and I met up with him at his operating base of Farnborough in Hampshire, formerly, of course, home of the Royal Aircraft Establishment, and now the largest business aviation airport in the UK. Now, Mark's life as a pilot has been almost entirely in the business aviation sector, which has thrown up some unique challenges and extraordinary stories, some of which he shared with us in one of the most immaculate aircraft hangars we'd ever set foot in. Well, Roy and I have come to Farnborough. Of course, it's an airfield steeped in aviation history. Now it's an incredibly busy Bizjet centre, and we've been joined by Mark Blois-Brooke. Unusual name, we might get onto that later, but Mark is a Bizjet pilot. And Mark, we met first of all because you very kindly took me flying out of White Waltham at the end of last year, earlier this year, in a Piper Cherokee.
Yes, we did. Had a lovely day. We went just around the local area, as far as I recall. It was a gorgeous day,
wasn't it?
Clearly. So,
yeah. Can you remember how well or otherwise I did?
It was phenomenal. It was phenomenally good.
Thank you very much. I mean,
well, we got back in one piece, didn't we? So,
yes. He let me do quite a lot of approaches, but would always take over just before we hit the ground.
White knuckled. No, yeah. I don't recall it that way. It was fine. It was fine.
But Mark, your aviation career pretty much began at White Waltham, I think, as a flying instructor, didn't it?
Yes, it pretty much did. So I got to fly at White Waltham after coming back from the States. I'd done a bit of flying out there. So this was in 1978, 79. Yeah. Introduced to White Waltham by my brother-in-law, whose cousin had been there as an engineer or something. So bowled up one sort of February afternoon and got introduced to the chief flying instructor, Maurice Looker, and said, have you got a job? Had a flying instructor's licence. And he said, yeah, start Monday. So that was it.
What a way to start. And just some of the story, you've written this brilliant book called Life in a Tin, which is basically your life story in flying. Some of the stories in there are wonderful, and the one or two really good ones from White Waltham, some of which I can't remember. I do remember someone flying over the tin roof with their undercarriage hitting the roof was a game that used to be played. That
was a sort of apocryphal story of Maurice Looker, because this all predates my time there, but he was, before he retired, he was the flying instructor himself, the chief flying instructor of the club. And they used to have air cadets, RF air cadets, and they still do, I think. And these air cadets used to live in the sort of back of the clubhouse, had a corrugated tin roof. And Maurice Looker, to wake them up in the morning, used to get in his Oster and run the wheels of his Oster along the corrugated. I mean, you can imagine the rough.
This is airball.
Yeah, airball. So all these cadets would spill out of bed, horrified, terrified. So you can imagine what that was like. So that's that was Maurice Looker. He was old school.
Yeah. But your stories are amazing because they are also old school before an awful lot of legislation was brought in, at least I would guess. So your first sort of commercial job was as an air taxi pilot. How did you get into that?
So I basically did what's called the self-improver route, which has been closed off for years now. You have to do approved courses and all the rest of it. But back in the day, you could get a flying instructor rating and then instruct without a commercial licence, just instruct on a PPL and a flying instructor rating, get your 700 hours, which was required for the commercial licence, get your licences and away. So that was the way, that was the route then. And my first job, having left White Waltham, was with a company called Chesswing, now long expired, which was an air taxi company. So I got a break, luckily, because things were pretty bad then in the sort of, when was that, beginning of 1980, things were pretty bad economically. But I got a job with Chesswing, and I was chuffed to get it because it was flying a really nice aircraft. I was flying Barons and Cessna 421s, which was just great.
So these are all twin-engine?
Yeah, twin-engine air taxi aircraft, really. It's a great way to learn the business because you scare yourself stupid. Because you're flying, let's face it, fairly underperforming aircraft in all weathers on your own. It's a great way to learn the trade, I think. And in some ways, I say in the book, I think guys who go straight onto EasyJet now, or whatever, I mean, great, good luck to them, straight onto big jet equipment, but boy, you miss a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But
I mean, you've done.
You sound like an old fogey when you say it, but I think it's genuinely true. And a lot of guys, tend to agree with that.
Yeah, I think that you're an old fogey.
Yes, yeah, I definitely agree with that. Yeah. Ask my kids.
But you've done real flying and lots of it. I mean, the first time I sort of became aware of air taxis was reading Dick Francis novels, because I think he was a pilot. He loved writing about this, and it seemed that the air taxi really just existed to take jockeys to various meetings around the country.
Well, I did a lot of that as well.
Did you?
So, what can I just ask, what is an air taxi?
Well, air taxi is basically just that. So, if you want to go somewhere, you don't want to take a train or drive, you'd phone up the local flying club or whoever it is and ask if they got an aircraft to take you there. And if they're licensed to do that, then away you go. So I used to take jockeys around race courses because they use helicopters a lot, obviously, but if they didn't, then they'd use like a light aircraft, and they were great because they're the guys. They probably tipped the best. I've never been tipped anywhere else other than with jockeys, or jockeys' friends, because they do well on the horses. They'll drop you 50 quid, which in 1970, 80 was a lot of money. So and it was great fun.
But I still think 50 quid's a lot of money these days. Yeah.
So how would your timetable work on a sort of weekly basis? Was it completely ad hoc, and you were just waiting at your cab rank?
Well, not exactly, because the Chess Wing actually was a aircraft management company as well. So we managed these 3 aircraft for a caravan company. So the bread and butter of the job was to take these sort of caravan salesmen around various caravan sites around the UK, which meant going to very sort of weird places, disused airfields and stuff you could never do these days, and just drop in where you could. They'd disappear for a few hours, come back, and then you go off to another site and all that. But fitting in amongst all that, we did a bit of air taxi as well, so it'd be a bit of both. It was a really good mixture.
Interesting. So, what were some of your most interesting destinations, or maybe even passengers from that period?
The passengers... when was I doing this? I was doing this in 1984, which is the 40th anniversary of D-Day. So I did a lot of flights down to Caen in Normandy. I'm trying to think who I took now. I think it's like Selina Scott and people like that, and Frank Boff and people like that, which was really good fun. And that was actually one of the stories with, I remember this guy, the US Marine Corps helicopter couldn't get response from Paris Information. This guy just got off the USS Nimitz, parked offshore off Normandy Beach, and was in his helicopter with, I suppose it would have been Reagan, trying to get through to Paris. He just completely blank him. They wouldn't answer at all. And then somebody says, they'll never answer you, mate. And the American guy says, yeah, I guess that's true. So he just does his own thing. But so trips like that, which are always great. Did one to Arnhem with some guys who were in the Paris during the war. Again, I think it was the 40th anniversary of that. So stuff like that was,
I did actually. I was part of the BBC team who did the 50th anniversary of D-Day, and we actually did go out on a Piper Seneca, I think, from it was either Elstree or Denham.
Right.
I think Denham, out to an airfield near Pegasus Bridge. So that was a little air taxi jaunt. The only time I've ever done it. It was me, the producer, and another producer. And it was basically a freebie. There was no need to go at all, but he thought that it would be useful for me to see where I was going to be stationed on the day of the broadcast. But it was brilliant. So, that's the kind of thing you do. And we had the pilot had provided tea, a flask of tea.
Yeah, it's all pretty basic. I'm trying to think back now, but it's all pretty basic. So you have like a thermos, which you've got to be really careful about opening in flight. But anyway, a thermos of tea, maybe a little bar box in a cool box or something, and some sandwiches. It was all pretty basic. And they're all jammed in the back. Talk about a leap of faith. They're all sitting in the back of this little aeroplane, and I've taken... I would never do that, but then no one seemed to think twice about it. But we survived. But
that's the interesting... Well, one of the interesting things is that you're not just the pilot. You're also the kind of... you're the chauffeur. You're also providing everyone with their catering.
What, entertainment?
Exactly. I mean, you're a bit more than just the guy who's flying the aircraft.
Yeah, at that level, well, I suppose we are at this level as well, on the jets. But it's all pretty basic, and most of the passengers know what they're getting. You get what you pay for, and they all muck in, and it's fine. Yeah. So I've never had a bad experience with anybody because they can't. You have to manage expectations in this business a lot, but when you've got no expectations in the first place, it's easy. So in some ways, air taxi days were easier than the sort of corporate stuff we do now.
Yeah. You say you've never had any bad experiences, but reading your book, it seems that you worked for some fairly dodgy operators, flying some slightly dodgy aircraft with even dodgier clientele. The guy who you met at Biggin Hill, I think, carrying a briefcase and nothing else, it was at night, and you took him off to Spain.
No, that was actually that was another occasion. No, this one was to take this guy who just done a building society in Hastings, as it turned out.
When you say just done, he just held it up.
Well, I mean, basically, we got this call. I got this call at home. Get to the airport now. Get in the airplane. Go to the South End. Pick up this guy. And take him to Rotterdam or Amsterdam, I can't remember.
Oh, right.
Amsterdam, I think it was.
Yeah.
So, okay. And the boss of the company said he'll pay in cash, so fine. So I get to the South End and meet this guy who's carrying nothing but a briefcase and a teddy bear, which seems very suspicious to me. And we do everything properly. We go through customs, immigration, get him on the aeroplane, fly across the North Sea into Amsterdam. I sort of escort him through customs, immigration, and say bye, and that's it. I fly home. The next day, the boss phones me up and says, "Did he pay you?" I said, and I could tell in his voice he wasn't happy about it. "Did he pay you?" I said, "Yeah, he paid me whatever it was, the 800 quid. I can't remember what it was." He said, "Well, get it in the bank fast because it's hot money." So I said, "Well, what do you mean? Is it dodgy?" He said, "Very. The guy's just done a building society in Hastings for 20 grand." So anyway, and the boss of the company was a little bit fly by night anyway. So he didn't want the law breathing down his neck. Anyway, the next day, a detective from Vine Street Police Station phoned me up and said, "Would you mind coming in for a chat?" And I think, "Oh, God." And I sort of go back and I think, I'm sure I've done everything properly. I didn't miss anything. I filed a flight plan, did everything above board. And they accepted that. And I told them what happened, and they said, "Fine, we'll pick him up." And they did. Yeah. They picked him up Interpol picked him up a couple of days later.
Yeah.
But the funny thing was, going through immigration in Amsterdam, you'd think, I mean, what is more suspicious in a sort of drugs capital? Can you say drugs capital of the world? With a teddy bear in a briefcase. If I was a customs officer, I'd have been. Anyway, they didn't.
Did he still have his firearm with him? Presumably, he did.
No, he didn't have. No, I don't think
he chucked that, had he?
He probably chucked out the door. I don't know. But I did look back in flight, and he had the briefcase open and was looking inside his briefcase. And obviously, he was just counting his money. I guess. Sort of gave me a wave, and I looked back because I'm on my own, and he's in the back, so you just let him get on with it, don't you?
What plane were you flying?
That was what was that? That was a Baron. So you got I sit up the front, 2 seats at the front, then you got this little Club 4 arrangement at the back.
Yeah,
and he was just sitting in the back there, counting his money.
But that was just one of many dodgy clients you seem to have flown around in your time, Mark. I don't know what that says about you.
Well,
or the organisations you work for.
The other one was it's always regional airports. The way to do this, it seems, is to find a regional airport on a wet Friday afternoon because no one's interested in what goes on, especially in those days. And some other guys I took out of Exeter down to Madrid, who had just done some fraud, massive fraud in Edinburgh or something. But at the end of the day, you're in the clear. Well, I'm in the clear because you follow everything that's necessary.
Yeah.
You go through all the checks and you file the flight plan, do all the right stuff. So you're in the clear. But the next day when you realise what you've done.
But did they always? Go on. Sorry.
I was just saying, sometimes you think, wow, I got away with that one. But they got away with that one. Because in those days, going to Spain, there was no extradition. So it was the place of choice, wasn't it? Costa del Crime and all the rest of it. So, if you can get an aircraft to take... And I remember that particular one out of Exeter, they were sort of very happy when the wheels were tucked away and we're on our way because they knew they were safe then. Unless I had to come back for some reason. They're gone. And they've gone to Spain. They're probably still there. I don't know.
Did you ever sense that you were helping some, a dodgy crook to get away?
Yeah.
I mean, yes, quite often.
Well, you think it does. Both of those occasions, there are probably a couple of others as well. I can't recall now, but both of those occasions, they're unusual. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Why there's such a pressing hurry to get out of the country on a wet Friday afternoon? So, interesting.
Has that changed much since you then progressed to the jets, if that's a progression? And so flying these fabulous corporate jets that we are surrounded by in the hangar here at Farnborough, has the clientele also got shinier as well as the aeroplane?
Yeah, well, those days I described, this is back in the 80s, all this stuff, and I don't think it really exists now. I don't think it can exist. There's far too many checks and balances now for that kind of thing to go on. So I'm sure guys would prove me wrong. They've got some great stories, I'm sure, but I can't think it would really go...
You couldn't possibly say.
And also I couldn't possibly comment. You might think so, but I couldn't possibly comment.
But there's some great stories you tell of when you were flying the Learjet, which you loved flying that aircraft.
Oh, it's gorgeous, yeah.
And it would just seem to be some of
Well, I say it's gorgeous, it's got a love and hate, but yeah,
really?
mostly gorgeous.
Why is that?
Well, the Learjet is the legendary aircraft, isn't it? Let's be honest, and it's fabulous in some ways. I mean, it's built out of steel and it's got tremendous performance. But operating, there's flying and operating, they're two completely different things. Aren't they? So flying it performance-wise and to handle it, lovely. Operating it, a nightmare because it's very old-fashioned. So the air conditioning was terrible, the refueling was archaic and stuff like that. But yeah, it's an iconic aircraft, and to most people, every business jet is a Learjet.
Yes, I mean that's right. That was the original.
It's the iconic,
Bizjet,
and it was the original. Well, not quite. Lockheed beat it with their Jetstar, but almost. Yeah, right at the beginning of sort of corporate jet stuff.
Yeah,
it's like to most people in the street, every airline is a jumbo or whatever. You have these iconic jets, don't you? So the Lear ticks that one off, and it was great. I had some great trips on that one.
Well, and some fairly hairy ones too. I mean, a lot of African destinations, airports that weren't really being
I love Africa,
run.
but boy, it can test you at times. Yeah. I mean, that incident you're probably referring to in Nigeria is one I could have done without.
So, can you remind us about that?
This was. It's sort of, I guess, early 90s. We used to go to Nigeria a lot because we did a lot of medevac stuff, so bringing people back, who are ill and stuff, which is great. And on this occasion, we got there, and as always, you ask for prior permission to get there. They never reply, so you go and you wing it, and you get to the FIR border, and you give your Tesco's card number as permission or whatever. You just wing it, and you land, and then you dash everybody appropriately, and you go to the hotel, and that's it. But on this particular occasion, it got a bit scary. We landed and did all the right stuff, dashed everybody, got in the taxi, and there'd just been a change of government. So Babangida, who was the president, had been the president for a long time, had gone, and some other chap had taken over. And whenever there's a change of government in Nigeria, the old rules kind of don't apply. So whereas you used to go through the security gate as you left the airport, give them 200 cigarettes and a bottle of whiskey, and they were happy. It was different. So we get to the security gate, and there's 4 guys there with guns, and you can just tell that they're looking for trouble or they're drunk or something. Your sense is bad. So they say, they stop the car, sticks his head in, and says, "I want dollars." I said, "Well, we got your Johnny Walker, we got your cigarettes." He says, "No, I want dollars," and he's looking, he's eyeballing me. So then he says, "Right, follow me," and he waves us off the road. So we then go down this dirt track. So we're now off the beaten path, if you like. There's no road signs or anything. And with these guys who want... Because they know we're carrying dollars, because crew are always carrying dollars. So he says, "I want your dollars." And the guy I'm flying with says, "You're not having my money." I said, "Mate, if he wants your dollars, give him the dollars. Because, I want to get back in one piece. Because things can get out of hand really fast. You could disappear without being too dramatic about it." So eventually I got through to him that we were there on the express orders of the president. We weren't. But express orders of the president, and so better that you let us go to our hotel and take the cigarettes and whiskey and let us go, which eventually he did. But it was a scary moment because when guys are all kind of drunk and looked a little bit drugged up as well, and there's guns around and you're off the beaten track, I mean, anything could happen. Yeah. So it's no time for heroics. I said, "Just take what he wants. I don't care." But it seems I'm not going to be a dead hero. What's the point?
There are a lot of stories a bit like this in your book, and it just made me think: if you're a Bizjet pilot doing corporate stuff and all these kind of journeys, it's so different from being a commercial airline pilot. I mean, you don't have these kind of adventures that you've had. Maybe not everyone wants to go through that, but...
Well, no, but I mean, they're not unique. I mean, most guys, lots of guys have similar stories, or worse. You ask anyone who's flown in Papua New Guinea or something, they've got stories that are probably, more scary. But you're right. I mean, this is the stuff that you do. It's kind of cut and thrust of this side of the business, because in airlines, it just wouldn't happen. So, and it's what most guys get a kick out of, is, we fly to the same rules as airlines. It's all AOC stuff, it's all it's scrutinised by the CAA. Was even in my day, but even more so now. But we used to lose stuff. Flights would be if we lost the paperwork. Yes. But you can't really do that now. But so we fly to the same rules as airlines, but the actual flying is completely different. Yeah. Of course it is. Yeah.
But going back to those earlier days, were you kind of just constantly just paid in cash as the guy or whoever they were left the plane? I mean, was it not
Couldn't possibly
more formalised? It was more formal.
No, it was more formalised than that. Normally it was cash up front. Obviously, whoever wanted to hire the jet would pay up front.
Yeah.
Sometimes that occasion when I took those debt collectors down to Malaga, I think it was.
Yeah.
And the boss said, "Get the money before you come back," and said, "No way, I'm asking these guys for money. There's absolutely no way," because they were horrible. So we took them down to Malaga. They disappeared for 3 hours and came back looking a bit dishevelled. I think I don't know what they'd done to the guy that owed them money, and then I called the boss up on the HF, which is the long range radio, and he says, "Before we get back, make sure you get the money off them." And I said, "You can ask them, mate. I've nothing to do with these guys. They're horrible."
And you never got...
And I don't think the boss ever got paid for that flight. No. But that was just a bad debt.
Yeah.
But he was very switched on. It's very rare that happened.
Yeah. But I mean...
It's fun and games.
It's exciting. I'm sure it takes a certain sort of person to do this. I mean, it's real adventure flying. I mean, we have an airline pilot on the podcast, as you know, James, who flies 777s. He's sent a few questions in. We don't know where he is. Yeah. How do you become a Bizjet pilot, please? He'd like to know.
Tell them to apply. How do you become? Well, it's just another. It's another course. It's another avenue, isn't it? So, I suppose most guys who do this job have been ex-airline at some point, and either get fed up with it or want to go back. In my case, go back to what they did before. So you do the airline stuff, and it's great. Don't get me wrong, but they kind of miss the cut and thrust of. What we do in corporate aviation. So, but once you've got the license, you can either apply to become a Bizjet pilot or you can apply to go to the airlines. It's entirely up to you.
Okay.
Having said that, most guys who fly Bizjets, you can't sell a pilot to a rich owner unless he's pretty experienced. They don't want a guy who's just got his license because they want experienced pilots. So it's quite difficult to sell a guy, however good you think he is, if he hasn't got quite a bit of experience. So a lot of guys that are corporate pilots now are ex-airline.
Okay.
And they're a really good product because they got the discipline that's required from the airlines, but they want to get back to this kind of flying.
So how do they regard you then, who hasn't come through the airlines?
Well, no, I just got lucky. As I say, it's better to be lucky than good. So, but I had a different route, didn't I? So, so it was just different then.
So you're flying the Falcon, the Dassault Falcon 7X?
I'm flying now for Falcon 7X,
For TAG Aviation?
Yeah.
So how does that actually work? So you talked about owners wanting, they choose their pilots. This aircraft that you fly is owned by a company rather than individual, and is that then chartered to different clients?
No, it's not. This particular one is completely private. It's managed by TAG Aviation. So TAG, like a lot of companies, is just a management company. So we manage aircraft for individuals and companies, and this is just one of the aircraft we have under management. And so I've been flying this particular one for about just gone 5 years. And it's not chartered, it's completely private. Some owners want to charter, get some money back, some don't. These guys don't, so that's fine. We just fly them around. And a lot of it's to do with their own tax arrangements. They get tax breaks if they do this. It's very complex business. But in my case, this one is just private.
So
in a way, it's a shame, because I actually love charter. A lot of guys don't, but owner flying, it tends to be very predictable. You go to the same places all the time with the same passengers, which is fine. But I really miss, in 3 days' time, you're going to Belize or whatever it is. Stuff like that is much more, to me, is more challenging.
Yeah.
A lot of guys don't like it, but I do.
But that's still corporate flying, is it?
Yeah, I mean, you can call it corporate flying business. It's hard, you can define it how you like, really. I suppose corporate flying is technically flying for a company, isn't it? I would suppose, but it's, these definitions are a little bit loose.
Yeah. So are you employed on a salary, or does it depend on how much?
No, it's salaried. It's just like airline or anything else. It's salaried.
But you're on the beck and call of the owner as to when you fly.
Yes.
So you can't get completely rat-ass one night.
Rat-assed?
And then be,
as if.
And then you might get a call the next morning.
No.
We need you at the airfield in 2 hours.
Actually, these owners vary, obviously, but these guys are fantastic. They always give us 2 or 3 days' notice.
Okay.
Not to sober up, but just 2 or 3 days' notice, and it's fine. And the flying we do is mostly European at the moment, so that's absolutely fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, to me, 2 hours for lunch is perfect.
That's enough, is it?
Yeah. So how often are you out at the moment?
At the moment, we fly probably 3 to 4 times a month, sometimes 5 times a month. And as I said, as we wandered through the hangar, these aircraft, all these Bizjet aircraft, they're very underused. So, 300-400 hours a year is a busy aircraft. Airlines will do 3,000-4,000 hours a year, so it's completely different. But that, they sit in the hangar, they're beautifully polished, they're immaculately looked after.
Yeah, we are sat now in an office overlooking the second hangar, which is, they're beautiful, aren't they? You could eat your dinner off the floor.
Yes, you could.
There are 2 jets in each enormous hangar, which looks like a film set, and they look brand new.
The first thing you said when we walked into the hangar was just like being in a Bond film.
Yeah, it's like a lair, but the aircraft look absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
You do sort of build not an affection, but a kind of affinity with your aircraft when you're looking after one aircraft. In an airline, it might be a fleet of 50, and they're all pretty much the same, aren't they? But in this, you get to know the aircraft really well, so you know its little quirks and everything, and you look after it. We all, at the end of a flight, we all spend time pampering the airplane, hoovering it, doing all the stuff, helping the flight attendant. It's not sort of, okay, here's the tech log, I'm off, like it is in an airline, which is great sometimes, don't get me wrong. But, we invest a lot of sort of emotional energy and time in the aircraft, just keeping it well fettled and well looked after.
Actually, one of James's questions touches on that. He asks, as a Bizjet pilot versus an airline pilot, how much of the non-flying duties do you do, like luggage handling, flight planning, refuelling, etc., etc.?
Well, not the flight planning. That's done by our dispatch, which is obviously very good at doing that stuff. All the overflight dip clearances and all the other stuff you have to do is done by TAG flight officer. But in terms of the baggage, actually is a running sore. Baggage can be horrendously. Baggage reconciliation, making sure that they take off what they brought on and not mixing it with anybody else's at busy airports is a nightmare. But we got a technique on our jet to get around that. So baggage, we do all that stuff. We load it ourselves. Refueling, obviously, we do that. So you're hands on the whole time.
Yeah.
With the baggage, because we just walked through the actual departure lounge here, which is the most incredible thing. You literally walk
as if Roy has never been in a VIP departure lounge before.
But it's just like one VIP airport, and you can walk pretty much from the entrance to the jet with about 20 metres.
Well, having got out of your car.
Car. How can you lose it? You can't lose a bag.
No, here it's not so bad. But you go to a busy airport, for example, Nice or somewhere like that in summer, where there are loads of Bizjets and loads of luggage flying about, and the handling agent can sometimes get stuff mixed up with the best will in the world. So there's security issues, obviously, with that. But also, the passengers really don't like it if they get the other end and they haven't got their bags. I mean, it's reasonable. So baggage reconciliation, as they call it, like keeping an eye on your bags, making sure they get on and get off at the other end. And we're talking about multiple bags. I mean, these guys don't travel light, so we're talking about 10, 12 big suitcases and hangers and goodness knows what. So that is probably the biggest pain of the lot. Actually, just looking after the baggage.
So, I mean, if, for example, Roy and I were now to go flying with you in one of these jets,
good luck.
I mean, thank you very much. You could take us out of the country.
This is about the 8th time Rob's hinted that since we've got
It's not working, is it? No.
You think I didn't notice? If we happen to...
No, my question is this. How easy is it just to leave the country in this sort of situation on a private jet without any kind of passport checks? I mean, if you could say that you're not leaving the country, you're just flying to a destination within these borders.
I see what you mean. So yes, you could. Of course you could. Yeah, you can get airborne and just say you're going to Glasgow and turn left and go to Caribbean or whatever. Of course you could. Yeah,
so what's to stop you and your passengers from doing that?
Nothing at all. That's what they want to do. I mean, they can do that. Well, I see what you're getting at. So, as I said, all the flights are pre-cleared. So, Customs and Immigration know the passengers. They know them pretty well anyway. They know their passport details and everything. So, they know who they are. If you end up going to another country which you didn't intend, well, you have to have a flight plan for a start. So, that would have to be refiled. Otherwise, air traffic wouldn't know what you're doing. So, you can't just sort of head up, in using that analogy, go to Glasgow, turn left, go to the Caribbean. That wouldn't really work because air traffic's going to say, well, what's the flight plan? So you have to file a flight plan, obviously, for your destination.
Yeah.
You can divert from that, of course you can, yeah.
I'm just thinking about doing I'm not thinking about doing a drugs run. But
it's not the criminal flight, is it?
I'm just... How difficult is it to actually smuggle yourself or some contraband across the border and land, especially if in a small aircraft, landing at an out-of-the-way airstrip.
It happens.
Who is going to catch you?
It happens.
Yeah.
It does happen, yeah.
Have you ever been involved?
I mean, there was that case recently, actually, of an aircraft that landed here coming in from Bogota, I think it was.
Yeah.
With about 500 kilos of cocaine or something. It does happen.
How much did you get for it?
Just bought a very nice house. No, it's of course it happens. I mean, obviously it does. Inevitably, doesn't it? Criminal gangs get involved.
Yeah.
But, I think the network of customs and police around the world is so tight now. I think it's really hard to get away with.
Yeah.
So, put it this way: when that jet landed here, there was a lot of people, asking them to help them with their inquiries.
Right. Okay.
So.
Yeah.
And sometimes you think, well, is that a clever thing to do? To go directly from Bogota, which is probably the drug centre in the world. Really? Anyway.
Yeah. Well, you might not choose to.
Probably not the smartest thing to do.
You might not choose to land at Farnborough, but say if you landed somewhere else which wasn't so.
No, you're absolutely right. Of course, it could happen. Yeah, of course it could. I don't think it does very much, but and of course, when it does, it hits the news because it's high profile. And everybody phones me up immediately and says, "Was that you?" Yeah.
Funny how people ask this question, isn't it? Another question from James. I don't know if this is based on some personal experience. I suspect it might be. But it asks, if you have a VIP on board and for whatever they are problematic, won't sit down for landing, etc., what are your options?
Right. This is a really good question, actually. I know people always say that, but that is actually a really good...
Well done, Jimbo.
Well done, good one. Because it does happen. And at the end of the day, if it's a private aircraft, what I'm flying is completely private. It's not charter when you can be a little bit more forceful. If it's their jet and they don't want to put a seatbelt on or they don't want to sit down, that is entirely down to them. All you can do is, or get the flight attendant to do, is say, I strongly recommend, and make sure you witness them saying this, I strongly recommend you sit down and put your seatbelt on. But at the end of the day, it's their train set if they don't want to do that. And I've flown loads of passengers who will not wear a seatbelt. And I think there's a bit of a role reversal in this business where they're normally the boss of a big corporations, very wealthy, very powerful. They do what they want and they don't like being told what to do. And this is just a way of sort of exerting some sort of pushback, some control that they won't do what they're told. See what I mean? There is a role reversal. When they get on the jet, they're not in charge. Okay. And so it's a way of sort of showing a bit of pushback. But, I've had a couple of occasions where they just won't wear a seatbelt.
It's very strange.
It is, really.
And what about if you're in a smaller aircraft where you don't have cabin crew? And
then again, like in the Lear, used to fly this chap down to Nice quite a bit, who literally would never wear a seatbelt. I mean, just didn't want to do that.
But if they got more difficult than just not wearing a seatbelt,
all you can say,
you've got a bit tanked up.
Well, yeah, it does. I suppose. You're alluding to that flight I had across the North Sea.
Oh, yeah?
No, if they get tanked up, you sort of say, look, I really recommend, because obviously if we have to do an abort on the runway, the brakes are pretty powerful. You'll be peeled off the windscreen. I honestly recommend that you do wear a seatbelt. Yeah. And if they don't, then what can you do? Now, if it's a commercial flight and it's a charter flight, then you can absolutely insist on it because that is regulation. Commercial rules are different to private rules. Yeah. See what I mean? There is you tried your best to make sure it's a safe flight. I mean, I wouldn't have people standing around in the cabin on takeoff. I wouldn't have that. But if they don't wear a seatbelt, actually, how would I know? Yeah.
But if people are being unruly, for example?
Yes, that doesn't happen so much on the jets. It happens a lot. The flight I think you're alluding to is the one I had years and years ago, taking oil rig workers back from Norway to Aberdeen, which is a fairly regular run that we had. We had a contract with a drilling company. And these guys had been obviously on the lash in Stavanger the night before, looked absolutely and I know, I used to work in the oil business, I know what it's like. So they looked absolutely terrible. They got on board the aeroplane, and I set off for Aberdeen, so it was a 3-hour flight or something in the Pipe of Chieftain. And halfway across the North Sea, a fight breaks out. Because these guys, for some reason, they started fighting anyway. So it's a really lonely place to be above the North Sea at 8,000 feet with a fight going on, and you're on your own. Literally, you're on your own. There's 8 guys at the back having a punch-up. So, and of course, that aeroplane, it's easy to open the door because it's not pressurised, so they can easily open the door and fall out and goodness knows what. I mean, so eventually some kind of order is restored, and the 2 fighting parties are pulled apart. That's fine.
Well, by
then, yeah. I mean, but it is quite scary. So anyway, I then do the old trick that everybody knows, that you get nice and high, hopefully into the sunshine. So get above the cloud layer, into the sunshine, where it's a little bit warmer. You turn the heat up, and you put the prop slightly out of sync, so you get this kind of wow, wow, this kind of noise. And guaranteed, you look back and they're falling asleep. That's
amazing.
And it works pretty well. Anyway, so then I called ahead. As soon as I could have got in range of Aberdeen, and the police met these guys on arrival, and they were arrested and sacked by the company. But yeah,
wow.
But it's never happened to me. I'm sure it has to other guys. On a jet, you tend to get a better clientele.
Yeah.
Of course,
Yeah, I can see
not roustabouts.
No, quite.
Our band came back from a tour in Japan, and the last day I think we played Tokyo, and essentially what happened is we just didn't go to bed. Yeah. We went all the way through after the show to a party, to a pub, to a club, to suddenly it was like, let's just pick up our bags and get on the plane. We nearly missed the plane because we were trying to get more drinks. We got on the plane.
Roll.
It wasn't a private jet. It was in the back of we were right in economy, and we literally all sat down and slept. We sat down in the seat, slept all the way back to Heathrow. And the only person who woke up was the drummer. The flight attendant said, "Oh, we didn't want to disturb you because we just assumed you guys had been working on the oil rigs."
You mean they didn't recognise you?
No.
How did that make you feel?
Yeah, well, and now when you say about the oil rigs, and we've done quite a few gigs in Aberdeen as well. At Aberdeen Airport,
you know what it's like.
You see that airport bar is
it was legendary. Yeah, I know it.
Yeah,
but there was another occasion that I took some. I think they were U2 roadies. I can't remember now. From Rotterdam down to Marseille. And so I meet these guys, and they're just really great guys, having good fun. We get on board the aeroplane, and then I smell this little sweet, smoky smell, and I look around, and they've all got these massive spliffs on them. And I said, "Look, guys, I really don't mind, but I'm going to be completely stoned." By the time we get to Marseille, I won't know which way's up. So, and they thought it was hilarious, and they put their joints out. It was fine, but I think 3.5 hours of this, and I'll be anybody's.
Do you have a worst passenger experience or client experience?
Which you can mention.
Or better still that you can't mention.
In terms of bad experience.
Oh yeah.
Honestly, no. I can't think of anything that was really that bad. I've taken interesting guys like that lifer that I took to Suriname. That was quite an interesting flight, but he was as good as gold. I can't think of anything that's been really. Probably the worst thing was that fight over the North Sea.
Yeah.
That was actually quite scary.
Yeah.
What was the lifer story?
Well, this was a guy. The Home Office approached us about 8 or 9 years ago now to take this guy who was a Surinamese citizen who was doing 2 life sentences in the UK for murder. So this is out of Leeds because he was in Wakefield Prison, which is up near Leeds. So we go up to Leeds, meet this guy, put him on the jet, and take him to Paramaribo, which is the capital of Suriname. And before we do the flight, we have a big sort of chat about how we're going to manage this, because he's huge, this guy. He's big. And if he breaks loose in the aeroplane, halfway across the Atlantic, how are we going to mitigate this? So we strip the aeroplane of anything that could possibly be used as a weapon. So the lavatory area is just stripped of everything.
Because he'd used a toilet brush, hadn't he?
Yeah, well, he'd done the usual sort of cons trick of melting the end of a bit of plastic, and it melts into a really sharp point, and he's a bad guy. But anyway, so we get there, and the Black Mariahs arrive, and he gets out, and he's in his gimp suit, he's all manacled together like this, and there's police everywhere, and we've got 4 security guards who are equally nasty on the aeroplane, as well as a Home Office representative and all this stuff. And we take off, and we get to Suriname.
What were you flying?
That was a 7X, Falcon 7X, charter, obviously. And actually, he was as good as gold, because a lot of these guys, they got 2 sides. They can either be like, really pleasant, a little bit simple, or horrid. And if we got him on a good day, I guess, anyway. But the funny thing was, when we got to the airport, which is in the middle of the jungle, the Home Office had said, when you get there, don't worry, it's all been arranged. There'll be officials to meet you and take this chap away. And when we get there, there's literally no one around. It's stifling hot, middle of the jungle. So we opened the door, and I said, well, what do we do with this guy now? So she says, well, we'll just let him go. So he's now changed into a jeans and a T-shirt.
Because he had been chained, he'd been shackled,
They'll be
manacled,
shackled the whole, and the sort of orange, prison suit.
Yeah.
That was really high security.
Yeah.
I mean, it leads to helicopters and goodness knows what. Anyway, so we let him go, and he just wanders off across the apron, and that was it. I mean, it's good to see that there's cock-ups at the Home Office. So we expected, some sort of police presence or something. No one told us where to park. I mean, literally, the place is deserted. So we just parked where we thought was appropriate, opened the door, and he wandered off. I guess he.
So he was free.
Yeah. Well, the Home Office said, "Look, we've done our bit. We got him home." If they can't organise a reception committee, that's not our problem. So off he went.
As a British taxpayer, I'm just going to put the question out there. Why does this guy get a private jet?
Well, but simply because no one would... airlines didn't want to take him. British Airlines don't fly to Suriname. It's a Dutch colony, I think, or a strong Dutch connection, isn't it? And even KLM only do it twice a week or something. So, and they weren't interested. They didn't want to pick this guy up. So basically, it's a very good question. Why did we pick up the tab?
And he loved it, didn't he? He loved the flight.
Yeah, he was great. So of course, at the end, I've got this group photo somewhere of him.
Yeah, it's in the book.
And that's right. It is. And I'm flying with this mate of mine, Pascal, a French guy, and this prisoner is saying, "Oh, we must keep in touch." And I'm thinking, so I immediately gave him Pascal's email. Pascal, if you listen to this, I'm sorry, mate. So I said, let's keep in touch. That's the email address. It was a funny trip.
But you had some dodgy government contracts, one involving potentially gold bullion. I think that there were some South Africans involved. Some
that was all completely above board.
Didn't sound it to me.
No. Well, has 7 years gone by? Yeah, I think I probably. No, we did a series of flights actually where we would meet South African Airways jumbo at Heathrow. So we fly from the Lear to Heathrow, park right next to the jumbo. Two guys, really big, burly South African security. What's that? Is it BOSS? South African Security Agency. Anyway, they'd get off, huge guys, hard as nails, with a couple of briefcases, and they'd get on the Lear, and we'd take them down to, I think it was Bilbao. And when we landed, they then got in a fast car, all pre-cleared. Nobody came in to sort of check passports or anything. These guys basically got off the jet, into a car, disappeared for 3 or 4 hours, and came back without the briefcases. And we reckon that it was sort of backdoor payment to France for something, maybe Mirage. This is in the height of apartheid, isn't it? Right. Mirage spares or military. Anyway, it was definitely gold because I tried to pick up one of these cases and the handle almost came off. In films you see people sort of tossing gold bars around. Trust me, it's heavy. So I picked up this slimline Samsonite and it was incredibly heavy. So I'm sure it was gold. But that was all cleared at a pretty high level, pretty high government level.
Doesn't mean it's not dodgy, though, does it?
Government's not dodgy, sure. Yeah. So, I've forgotten about that one.
Yeah, I love these stories. Another question from James. What's the longest range of a Bizjet? How high, fast, etc. compared to standard airliners would you go?
Range, they vary. I mean, a Lear's 2,500 miles, although you don't see many Lears these days. I suppose, realistically, anything sort of 3,500 nautical to 8,000. I mean, the new Global Express will do 8,000 miles.
Goodness me.
Which is tremendous.
Yeah. Is there a secondary crew?
You'd have to, and they have to be sort of configured in such a way that you've got two crews, because that's like we're talking about an 18-hour flight. That's ridiculous. I can't imagine anything worse personally. But,
no.
But they will technically do that. So, but most jets, I would say, sort of 3,500 to 6,500, 7,000 miles. That kind of range.
And what sort of height are you flying? Are you flying above the...
generally are. They've got great performance. They're all overpowered, all of them. So we normally up at 43, 45, 47,000 feet, that kind of thing, which has an advantage that you can get direct tracks. So, for example, going across the Atlantic, you don't have to follow the track patterns that are published every day. You can just go in a straight line because you're above all that stuff. Yeah. So in terms of routing, it's pretty good.
So what sort of heights are you talking about?
43.
Oh, wow.
45, that kind of height.
And how fast are you going?
And speed-wise, they're a little bit faster. Well, I guess much the same as airlines, or 86, 87 max, something like that. Some of the newer ones, 0.9, they're pretty quick.
Yeah.
They're just great They're beautiful aircraft.
Yeah.
They are lovely aircraft.
What about the way they're decked out inside? I mean, are the cockpits or the flight decks equally luxurious?
Not really luxurious. I mean, they're obviously state-of-the-art. I mean, they're 10, 15 years ahead of airliners, I would say, in technology, mostly. So they're very, very high-tech. They still can't make a decent seat, though. I've never been in an aircraft that's got a decent seat. For about 3 hours, you got to go... In spite of the fact they'll tell you it's designed by Porsche and all the rest of it, really? I don't think they are. It's the last minute, a couple of seats, put them in. Cabins, they can vary. I mean, they can be fabulous. I mean, you can spend literally millions of dollars on a cabin, depending on how you want it decked out. So, beautiful.
Yeah.
So, to a lot of people, it's an extension of their home, so they have it pretty luxurious, but very, very comfortably furnished.
How much is... Like, you were saying about how you get very attached to your jet. Does it have a name?
That's a good question. It doesn't, but it should have.
Yeah.
When it misbehaves, it has a name. But no, it doesn't, curiously enough. No.
Does it misbehave?
No, they're pretty good. They're highly electronic jets. All of these things, like all modern jets are, they're highly electronic. So, they have sort of hissy fits from time to time. And... very often the best thing to do is just shut it down, just turn everything off. Sometimes even take the batteries off. Just disconnect everything.
Not whilst airborne.
It'd be fun to get to, and then put them back together again and build it up, and it's gone. The gremlin's gone. So they can, and that's awkward when you've got passengers on board. Yeah, but they tend to accept. Yeah. They are getting more and more reliable. Each software update kind of stabilises things a lot. Ours is actually pretty good.
And what is your favourite bit of kit in your newest state of the art? You were saying when we were out there how you've got these head-up displays which can show you what's on the ground.
Yeah, so a lot of these new aircraft, actually ours doesn't have a head-up display, but most of them do. So the head-up display, EVS, which is enhanced vision system stuff, it's all stuff to give you more situational awareness, and it's phenomenal. Your situational awareness as you fly these days is just tremendous.
Why would you need that more than an airliner? Or is it just because they're so advanced?
You don't really.
No.
It's just that Bizjet manufacturers tend to pioneer this stuff, which then goes in... I mean, airlines have had HUDs for a while, don't get me wrong. Of course they have. The military have had them for 40 years. Yeah. So airlines do have them. And I think it was Alaska Airlines in the States that pioneered all of this stuff, in America anyway. But they do have them. The 787's got HUDs and everything. HUDs are fairly old hat now. But we have synthetic vision, so you're actually looking at a 3D picture of what's going on around you on the screens.
Wow.
It's phenomenal in terms of awareness of where you are with terrain and everything. From a terrain database, it's just tremendous. Yeah.
One of the scariest tales in your book goes back to your Learjet days, because you're such an experienced and skilled pilot.
Just be lucky.
You were given the job of doing a recertification flight, if that's the correct term, on the Learjet, where you had to put into stalls, etc., etc.
Yeah, that
sounded horrendous.
That was fairly hairy. Yeah. So the CAA, in their infinite wisdom, decided that every C of A renewal, which was 3 years, you had to take an aeroplane up and deliberately stall it. Goodness, I can't imagine why you'd want to do that, but that's so you had to check that actually stalled on schedule to the knot and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
So we got airborne to do the stalling test. It all went horribly wrong. Probably did our hand-fisted flying, I don't know. Anyway, I'm flying with this guy Martin. We're up there, and we do really careful calculations. We know what the C of G is. We know what the weight of the aircraft is. We know exactly to the knot when it should stall, when the stick shaker and all the warning stuff should go off, and when it should actually stall and all that. And the Lear has a stick pusher as well. So the stick shakers like to warn you you're getting close to the stall. And the stick pusher rams the stick forward to get you out of the stall, basically. So it had that device. So we do all this stuff. We briefed it really carefully amongst ourselves, and we get airborne. Sorry, we slow down, level flight, decreasing speed very, very slowly. We watch the speed. Yeah, that's all good. That's all good. 100 knots, 98, 97 or something. And then at 96, I think, we should have had the stick shaker come in. Which it did, and so that's fine. We tick that one off, and then whatever, I can't remember the fix now, 93 or something. We should have had the stick push, which forces the control column forward and gets you out of the stall. And nothing happened, and then the wing stalled for real and flicked. So we're then in the situation where we're very low on speed and the aircraft is literally flicked almost upside down. And just then the stick pusher kicked in.
Oh.
So we're now sort of in this extreme attitude with the stick pusher kicking off, and it's all hairy, and we lose about, I can't remember, 10,000 feet or something. It's quite alarming.
How high were you?
High. Yeah, you don't do the slow down. So I think we're 16,000 feet or something. We didn't expect it to go bad, but the thing with the Lear is it's got a very... there's not one here to show you, but it's got a very, very thin wing. Very thin. Even bugs, like squash flies on the leading edge will affect its stall performance. It's a very critical wing. And so when this didn't go as it should have done per schedule, it just basically flicked, and we were still kind of upside down.
So what happened? What happens when it flicks and then the stick pusher happens?
I can't remember the sequence of events now, but we kind of got to this point, and then the stick pusher basically pushed the nose down even more. We didn't quite go through a barrel roll, but we kind of to that position probably, and then it pushed, and then we pulled out of it. I can't remember exactly what happened, but it all happened at the wrong time, so the sequence is all wrong. and then we recovered from the flight, and I'd say to Martin, I'm never doing that again. And he said something like, I've got to change my trousers or something. It's like... But I think it's bonkers. They don't do it anymore, but I think it's bonkers to insist that you do something to an aeroplane that it's designed not to do. So it's designed not... It's got all these protections to stop you stalling the wing of a Lear because it is quite critical. Yeah. And then you go and do it. And if you're a test pilot... I flew once with Pete Reynolds, who's the chief test pilot of Learjet in the States. Guy, he's a legend. But he could fly so precisely... he probably would have got away with it because we're a little bit... we're not test pilots. We're ordinary line pilots having a go at test pilot stuff, essentially. So when it goes wrong, it's no surprise.
Why, when an aircraft wing stalls, is it always the left wing that drops?
No, not necessarily. Not in the jet. With a propeller aircraft, obviously, you've got all the all the torque and slipstream effect that can affect things. But on a jet, it's just a clean wing, isn't it? So sometimes one wing might be slightly rigged differently to the other. Maybe it's got a little bit, as I say, flies or something on it. Which will make one drop. Sometimes they drop quite benignly. The Lear definitely does not. When it goes, it just literally it's gone. The Lear was built as a fighter originally. It was a Swiss fighter design. That's the history of it. Yeah.
Goodness.
So it's carved out of steel, as I said, and it's got a very high performance wing. So, which is great. So high speed, never a problem. CA used to worry about the high speed of it. That's not a problem. The problem is actually the low speed, and obviously there have been accidents over the years with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was. But the funny thing about that was the autopilot never worked particularly well before that episode. But after that, it worked absolutely brilliantly. And I think what we did in that kind of fairly violent flick, I think we just jiggled something. And after that, so we got something out of it.
That sounds quite a worry to me.
At least then the autopilot worked better. But
that's my favourite thing about the other aircraft. When it goes wrong, you just basically turn it on, turn it off again.
Yeah, no.
Turn it on.
Yeah.
Your other great passion, I think I'm right in saying, is seaplanes, isn't it, and float planes?
But I've never done it.
You gave a talk about Waltham about the restoration of the SE5A?
Or I gave a very brief talk. It's meant to be an intro to something else, but turned out to be the sole act. About the Schneider Trophy. Yeah, I've always had a fascination with seaplanes, and I've said to my wife, Amanda, that when we win huge numbers on the lottery, I'm going to immediately to Alaska. Because I want to do a float plane rating, and I want to do it there. I don't want to do it in Florida. I'm not interested. I want to do it in the mountains, in the lakes.
Oh, wow.
With guys that really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Because I've always had a fascination with seaplanes.
Interesting.
But never... I have been in one, actually, in the States. I flew in an amphibian aircraft quite a bit. But I think if you live in an area like Alaska or Canada or Northern America where there are lots of lakes, how can you not have one? Most houses do, don't they, out there?
Yeah. My uncle was a bush pilot, actually, in Canada.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah. So you know exactly. So you want to go camping for the weekend, get in the plane, just go to a lake you've never been to before, camp. I mean, how fantastic.
Yeah. But what's the story with the SE... Is it the SE5A or the SE6B?
SE5A or SE5. I'm not directly involved in it. It's a colleague of mine at TAG here who's rebuilding a replica.
Wow.
So... I don't know how far... I haven't seen him for a while. I'm not sure where he's got with this. But this is... The SE5 was obviously a very, very fast seaplane for the Schneider Trophy. Yeah. Led into the S6, which basically won the trophy in 1932, 3. Yeah. Which led on to the Spitfire. So, it's got that kind of history.
Yeah. Now, the SE5A is something quite different. It's a First World War biplane fighter, I think, isn't it?
It's S5, I'm sorry, S5. Yeah. Not SE5.
No, that was me. I got that wrong.
But no, fantastic. I love this. I love that era as well, because the whole thing with the Schneider Trophy, if you look at from 1913 to 1933, the technological advancements were just phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, went from literally things that could do 40 miles an hour, 1913, to over 420 miles an hour with floats, with sodium-cooled valves and high-powered R-series engines. I mean, really powerful engines in 17 years or something.
Wow.
It's insane.
Yeah.
So it's a fascinating period. But this colleague of mine is rebuilding a replica S5.
To fly.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
I think we're in contact with them.
Are we?
Yeah,
I mean, a really good story,
Yeah,
actually. Yeah.
we've been invited down to check it out. So
Great. Where are they on the handle? Somewhere down there?
I think bits were being built in France. I can't recall. I haven't actually seen Will for a
we'll
while.
go there. That's fine.
if only we knew somebody had a jet. Could show us it.
Yeah, how would we do that?
Hang on, let me think. We know this dodgy guy.
Yeah.
But there is actually an S6 at, I think, the only one in the country, down at the Solar Museum in Southampton.
Oh, yes.
Which is...
I went there.
It's a really good museum,
It's
actually.
an amazing museum.
It is fantastic.
Yeah. It's got loads about that, about those races there.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing.
Really, yeah, fantastic.
And it's a fantastic
that one there
area.
is, I believe, it is the winning, the one that actually won the final trophy.
Yeah.
So it's got huge heritage.
Yeah.
Should be flying, though. All these things should be flying.
Yeah.
Rather than stuck in museums, I think.
It wouldn't. That would be the perfect world, wouldn't it?
Wouldn't it? But a replica's better than nothing, I suppose. But Will's very well. He'll tell you about it, I'm sure. He's very keen to get it done for. I think the S5 first flew in 1927. So get it ready for 2027, which will be 100 years, which is phenomenal if you think about it.
Do you think we'll still be going on the podcast?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we haven't got the thumbs up right.
It's only 5 years.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
One thing I didn't ask you was the most famous passengers you've taken.
Well, who can you say?
I don't really name drop, actually, because you don't in this business. And we've all thrown a lot of...
But if you could name drop...
I know you can't, but if you could. I think probably the most infamous was, and I can say this now because he's no longer with us, was Adnan Khashoggi, who was the arms dealer.
Oh, nice.
No, he wasn't. So he was a very, very wealthy arms dealer. Remember back in the 80s and things, involved in all kinds of bad things. And his jet, I think he had a corporate DC-9 or something at the time, and had broken down. And we picked him up from Paris to take him somewhere. And he sort of looked at the Learjet like it was something he'd trodden in. He said wasn't used to getting these little jets.
Really?
But no, he was very infamous.
What about celebs? Have you ever flown the indie rock band Scouting for Girls?
Who?
I know you know who they are because your daughter is a fan.
Els would be...
Oh, that was beautiful.
Crushed.
Well, I think that day's got to happen.
I hope so.
That's what I'm saying.
Nobody hopes more than me, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So do you know where your next flight will be?
I don't, actually.
Or when?
No, I don't know. It's all fairly quiet at the moment, but something will pop up.
Is it quite a disruptive lifestyle?
Yes, I mean, this is the big difference between this and the airlines, really, and that's why it doesn't suit a lot of guys. And I must admit, I struggle with it because it is disruptive. The payoff is that you do some fantastic trips. You fly lovely aeroplanes with a dedicated crew that you know really well. They're friends of yours after a while.
Yeah. We
get on as a team. It's great. And you go to really nice places and spend 3 or 4 days and come back. So that's to like. What's not to like is it is disruptive. Ask my wife. There are times when you just can't make things that you promised you would do. And, I've missed school plays and all the stuff, sports days and family events.
Some people would say you're very fortunate.
Well, some of the family events maybe. But, so that's the downside. Where in an airline, obviously, it runs on rails, doesn't it? When you're on, when you're off for months. Yeah. I think I'm right in saying, was with us anyway, for months ahead. Yeah. So, that's... So it's horses for courses. You do what you like.
How many other crews are there that fly this jet?
On this jet, so we've got 3 pilots, 2 captains and a first officer, and 1 flight attendant and 1 engineer.
And that's it.
So that's the team. Yeah. Wow. So very small team.
Yeah. Well, look, you've flown me in the Cherokee. Loved that. Really looking forward to the next day.
Yeah, probably have to do that again. Actually, that was really good fun.
Yeah, and really looking forward to the next day.
How come I missed that?
Mark, thank you so much for talking.
Absolute pleasure. Excuse me.
Thank you.
It's been great.
Absolute pleasure. Yeah, great. Really good. Thank you.
There is actually one last question.
Oh yeah.
Which I just saw. It was from James as well. Are you jealous of 777 pilots?
Or Puma pilots.
Yeah, go on.
777.
Be as rude as you like.
Well, I'm jealous of their access to the cheese board from first class. My wife was a BA purser for 30 years, and so she knows all about that. But, yeah. No.
Well done. Let's put him in his place. Brilliant. Well, a huge thanks to Mark for those amazing stories and for the insight into the corporate aviation world, or the Bizjet world. And do look out for his book, Life in a Tin. I mean, the stuff in there, we barely scratched the surface in that interview, but the stuff in there that will make your jaws drop and probably hang open. They're just brilliant. So a huge thanks to Mark. Look out for Life in a Tin by Mark Blois-Brooke. That's Blois-Brooke. So we look forward to seeing you look forward to your joining us for the next podcast. And if you'd like to listen to any of all of our podcasts so far, you'll find them on our website, toplandinggear.com, or wherever you normally get your podcasts. And do subscribe if you can. It's completely free, of course. And let us know anything or anyone you'd like us to feature. We'll try and make it happen. You can get in touch with us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram at Top Landing Gear. And please do email us with your questions for our expert James at info@toplandinggear.com. That's info@toplandinggear.com with 2 G's. And we're really looking forward to our next podcast. Check out the socials to see when they're all dropping. In the meantime, thanks so much for listening, and bye for now.